Good everyone. Welcome to Latvia. When was the last time you were able to say that you were in Latvia? It's been a while, huh? I want to thank our guide Edward. Round of applause for Edward. Okay. And we also want to thank the bus driver Raymond, who's navigating the treacherous road in the snow. You see, it wasn't easy for Avi to arrange snow in Latvia. It's an extra feature. It makes it much more authentic. You know, if you would come to Latvia and it would be like 75 degrees and sunny, you would think you're in San Diego. You know, now you know it's actually Latvia. It's the middle of May and it's snowing. You know, you can't make that up. When was the last time anything like that happened? Okay, so we're going to speak a little bit about Rabbi Meir Simcha of Dvinsk. You know, when we get to the kever, we'll speak about his history, but I want to give you a little bit of a flavor for the approach al Torah of Rabbi Meir Simcha of Dvinsk. Maybe we'll do a clip on Rabbi Meir Simcha's attitude to the formation of the state of Israel and Zionim. Anyway, Rabbi Meir Simcha was born in 1843. He lived 83 years, so 1926. He was the Rav of the Ashkenazi community of Dvinsk. The Rogachev was the Rav of the Hasidic community of Dvinsk. And Rabbi Meir Simcha has a unique approach to Chumash, in a way similar to the Parshas Derachim, where he would apply halachic principles to explain the narrative of the Chumash. Usually, most of the Mefarshim on the Torah, they explain the narrative based on the context of the Psukim, based on the details given in the Psukim. But to bring in, let's say, halachos found in Shas or Shulchan Aruch to explain why Yaakov Avinu did something or why Yitzchak did something is innovative and original. So I want to just give you a little bit of a flavor for one of the classic approaches of Rabbi Meir Simcha of Dvinsk. Okay, the Rambam in Hilchos Yesodei HaTorah, Perek Yud Halacha Daled, establishes the following rule. There was once a debate between Yirmiyah Hanavi and Hananiah ben Azar. Yirmiyah Hanavi came and he predicted something bad would happen, and Hananiah predicted something good would happen. So Yirmiyah turns to Hananiah and says, you know, you better watch out, Yirmiyah says, because if what I say doesn't come true, that doesn't prove I'm a Navi Sheker. But if what you say doesn't come true, that proves you're a Navi Sheker. Says the Rambam, because if a Navi says something good will happen, it has to happen. And if it doesn't happen, that proves the Navi is a false Navi. But if a Navi says something bad will happen, it doesn't have to happen. Hashem is Archapayim. Maybe the person did tshuva, maybe Hashem relented, maybe Hashem had rachamim. So the Rambam establishes the following rule, that if a Navi says something good will happen, it must happen. If it doesn't happen, that proves he's a Navi Sheker. If a Navi says something bad will happen, it doesn't necessarily have to happen. That's what the Rambam writes in Hilchos Yesodei HaTorah. However, the Rambam, in his introduction to the Perush HaMishnayos, asks a question on this. Really? If the Almighty says something good will happen, it has to happen? But Hashem told Yaakov Avinu, V'hinei anochi imach ushmarticha b'chol asher telech v'ashivo isicha, and it says Vayira Yaakov ma'od vayitzo. Yaakov was very afraid. Ask the Rambam, what was Yaakov afraid? So Chazal say Shema Yigrei Machet. But I thought the rule is that if a Navi says something good will happen, it has to happen. So what's Yaakov afraid of? Says the Rambam, when do we say that if a Navi says something good will happen, it has to happen? That's only if the Navi says it. But if he hears it from Hashem, it does not have to happen. If the Almighty tells somebody something good will happen, it does not have to happen. Shema Yigrei Machet. It's only if the Navi repeats it, then it has to happen. You got the rule? So it comes out, there's three scenarios. If a Navi says something bad will happen, does not have to happen. If Hashem tells the Navi something good will happen, it does not have to happen. The only time it has to happen is if Hashem tells a Navi something good will happen and the Navi says it over. Okay? Now why? Why does it have to happen? Says the Rambam, because otherwise there would be no way to check if a Navi is a Navi MS. The way to check is, if a Navi says something good will happen and it doesn't happen, then he's a Navi Sheker. Comes Rabbi Meir Simcha of Dvinsk, and in his Peirush ala Torah, he utilizes these rules of the Rambam in at least 4 places. I'm going to give you just a little flavor for how the Ar Sameach uses these principles to explain the Psukim in the Torah. You know, Hashem tells Avram Avinu that he's going to have a child, that he's going to inherit Eretz Yisrael. And what does Avram Avinu say? Bama Eda Ki Irashena. How do I know that I'll inherit the land? Says Rabbi Meir Simcha. I know how my children will know that they'll inherit the land, because I'm going to tell them. And once I tell them, it's guaranteed to happen. But how do I know? Because so far I've only heard it from you. And just because you've told it to me, it doesn't have to come true. That's how Rabbi Meir Simcha learns. Ba'ama Eda. How will I know that I'll inherit? My descendants will hear it from the Navi, but I heard it from God, so it doesn't have to happen. Okay, this one is really remarkable. You know, all the Mefarshim deal with, when Sarah heard she was going to have a child, what was her reaction? She laughed. And Hashem remonstrates with Sarah. Hashem says, Lama zeh tzachaka Sarah. Why did Sarah laugh? Why did Sarah laugh? And what was Avram's reaction? Vayitzchak. Avram also laughed. Doesn't the pasuk say Avraham laughed? So why is Hashem only criticizing Sarah? Why is Hashem not criticizing Avraham? So Rashi says, no, by Avraham it means he laughed in joy. By Sarah, when it says she laughed, it means she laughed incredulously. In fact, the Targum translates the laughter by Avraham, Bachadi, that he rejoiced. By Sarah, she laughed. There's another beautiful pshat. The Chizkuni says, you know this phenomenon? Your daughter does everything right. You know, she knows how to raise her children. She knows how to deal with them. She knows how to speak to them. But your daughter-in-law, she can't do anything right. She doesn't know how to raise children. She doesn't know how to run her household. You hear of that phenomenon? It's pretty common, you know. The daughter knows everything. The daughter-in-law, what happened to her? So the thing is, the mother-in-law wants to criticize the daughter-in-law, but if she has even an ounce of common sense, she knows she can't do that. So what does she do? She turns to her daughter and she says, Yenta, you don't know how to raise the kids. You don't know when to put them to bed. You don't know how to go shopping. And she makes sure to say it in earshot of the daughter-in-law. She says she's talking to the daughter, but she really means the daughter-in-law. So too says the Chizkuni. Hashem tells Abraham, why did Sarah laugh? Meaning, why did you laugh? Hashem was criticizing Abraham, but he was allowing him to save face. However, says the Meshech Chochma, no. You know why Hashem didn't criticize Abraham? Abraham laughed because he had no guarantee that would happen. Why? Because God told him. Just because God told him, it doesn't have to happen. Shema Yigur Machet. So there's no problem with Abraham laughing. But the question is, Lama zet tzachaka Sarah? Why did Sarah laugh? Sarah heard it from a Navi. So then it has to happen. So Sarah has no right to laugh. Here's another example where Rabbi Meir Simcha uses this principle. Vayetar Yitzchak Lashem Lenoichach Ishtoi. Yitzchak davened to Hashem. Rashi says it means opposite his wife. The Rashbam says it means for his wife. Yitzchak davened for Rivka. So Rabbi Meir Simcha asks, why didn't he daven for himself? Says Rabbi Meir Simcha, he didn't have to daven for himself. Hashem already told Abraham that Abraham would have children, and Abraham said it over. So Yitzchak was guaranteed to have a child. But there was no guarantee it would come from Rivka. So therefore Yitzchak davened not for himself, because for him it was a guarantee, but he had to daven for Rivka. One more, friends. Hashem tells Moshe Rabbeinu, Pinchas ben Elazar ben Aharon HaKohen, Heishiv es Chabasim Yal Bnei Yisrael. You know that Pinchas, he's a great guy. I really want to reward him. What does Hashem tell Moshe? Lachein Emar, therefore say, Why would Moshe have to say it? Why can't Hashem just tell Moshe, and then it will happen? The answer is, says Rabbi Meir Simcha, if Hashem just tells Moshe Rabbeinu that Pinchas will be rewarded, maybe he won't be rewarded. Maybe Pinchas will sin and he won't be deserving. But once Moshe says it, then it has to happen. So therefore the Rebbeinu Shem tells Pinchas, Lachein, Hashem tells Moshe, Lachein Emar, say it. Once Moshe says it, you can take it to the bank, that it will come true. So this is an example of where Rabbi Meir Simcha uses halachic principle of the Rambam in his Hilchos Yisodei HaTorah and his Perush HaMishnayos. Namely, if the Navi says something bad will happen, doesn't have to happen. If he says something good will happen, and the Navi does not repeat it, does not have to happen. Once the Navi repeats it, then you can take it to the bank. Okay.